Hey everyone, welcome back to Reeling It In, the podcast where we take a moment to reel in the best and worst film moments while keeping our commentary 100% real. I'm Jack Williams, and today I'm joined by...
Hello, I'm Anish Topiwala. I also like movies. That's about it.
Yeah, and my brother.
Matthew Williams. I like movies as well.
Oh, I forgot he was your brother.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
My brother.
Everybody learns every day. Like there's someone who finds out about it.
Yeah, I just relearned it, so cool.
No, because we got the twins here, but no one ever remembers that we're brothers. Which,
No, and like literally somebody finds out about it every single day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I actually was recently talking to someone who thought I was joking when I said we were siblings, but just because we have the same last names. But no, we are siblings. Mm-hmm. If you think I'm into movies, this guy probably beats me 50-fold. I don't know. He was the one who got me into movies. I would not be here talking about movies today without him. But
Are
first,
you saying I'm the reason for Reeling It In existing?
Yeah, we could make that jump. we could say that. But we're here today to talk about Matt's work a little bit. He's a filmmaker here at MSU. He does short films for the major and all sorts of things. And he has a new movie coming out. But before we talk about that, I want to talk about Anish a little bit because he is a new face here.
I am a new face, yeah.
Because Kyra isn't joining us today, but Anish will be joining us as co-host next school year. So I wanted to have him on to sort of kind of feel it out. Anish, why don't you tell us a little bit about your movie interests, what got you into it, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, for sure. I'm very excited. I've always liked movies. That was kind of like my first passion in like middle school. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and movies was kind of like the first fixation. Where it was like it's kind of shifted throughout the years. But I remember watching The Shining on like Netflix on my laptop, and like I didn't realize movies could do that. I didn't realize movies could be like something other than what you're seeing right in front of you. Like there's so many things under the surface. And then I got into like a lot of Kubrick movies, a lot of like older like 80s, 70s, and then after that it just kind of like became like one of the things I always focused on. I really enjoyed like just watching a lot of movies in middle school and high school, but now I don't have time for that obviously just because I'm so busy.
No, it's hard to find time now.
But I moved like into like an interest to writing, and now it's just like whatever I can do to make money to write, I'll do, honestly.
No, I'm kind of in the same thing. I mean, I want to say the first, and I think I've talked about this before. But the first movie that like got me into movies was Blade Runner, and that was due to Matt showing me Blade Runner. But Matt, I'll ask you the same question: what got you into movies? I already know the answer to this, but for our audience,
Yeah. For me, I think it was not really just, I guess, not clicking much with anything else when I was younger. Similarly to you, it was kind of this discovery of like, oh, this is something that you can do. It's not just a form of entertainment. It was much more like active for me in that sense. Like I would watch something and say like, oh, like how can I do this? Or how can I achieve something similar? So, yeah, I mean, nothing else was really clicking in school. I wasn't really good at like math or science or anything else. So after, started getting into movies and, just being really enamored by everything I was watching, I decided to sort of make my own stuff. And mostly that was just with a phone and some friends and Jack occasionally.
yeah.
And then from there, I just started making stuff, and I've just kept making stuff. So,
yeah. So what was it? Curious, what's your experience been like at MSU? So here at MSU, for those of you who don't know, we have digital storytelling. That's your major, which is basically the filmmaking major. So I guess I'd be curious what your experience has been. What was it like making the leap from just kind of doing it with an iPhone back at home to kind of being surrounded by people who have a similar passion?
Yeah, I think, the biggest difference is really just the resources, I think. Whether that's equipment or people.
Yeah.
You get here and then there's people who know a lot more than you, and then you have all this equipment that you've never seen before in your life. And so kind of coming here, it was really just kind of like this, opening of the doors for me. It was like, oh, look at all this stuff that I have access to now. And, how many opportunities I can now take to learn all the different aspects of filmmaking. Because kind of growing up, I was like one of those guys. I was like, oh, I'm gonna be a director. I'm gonna like make all these awesome movies.
The next Spielberg.
Yeah, the next Spielberg. And then like you get here, and it's like there's like 20 other guys who are thinking the exact same thing. So you kind of like you get here, and then you kind of take that as an opportunity. You step back and you say, oh, there's like so much more that goes into filmmaking. And kind of being here has let me explore all those different things that I could potentially do professionally. So
how does it feel like working on like a film set as opposed to just like working at home with like your iPhone and like a few friends? How humbling is that experience? Because I remember being on a few sets and it's just like, wow, there's so many things going on at the same time. It's a lot of like chaos, kind of like controlled chaos.
Yeah, no, it's crazy because you realize just how much you don't know. Like the first couple sets I was on coming here, in hindsight, they were really kind of basic, not super advanced equipment or whatever. But the first couple sets that I was on, it really did kind of humble me. And I was like, oh my God, like I thought I was like,
You thought you were ahead.
Yeah, and it's like, I kind of had this cynical view where I was coming in and I was like, do I really need all this education and whatnot? And then you get here and you're like, yeah, you do. You absolutely do. And it kind of did take me a while to get into that headspace of, like I don't know everything, and it would be best for me to kind of keep an open mind and soak all this stuff in. And it kind of took me a while to get to that point, but once I did, that's kind of when I got more comfortable being on set and asking questions and realizing that no, I'm not going to know everything right off the bat, and that's the way you learn, is by asking questions and just getting more experience.
Yeah. Gotcha. So what did you kind of start with? Because I know you mentioned you kind of wanted to be the director, to be the next Spielberg, so to speak, and obviously you didn't start with directing, but then last year you came out with Karina, which was a short film you wrote and directed. What was that journey like? Where did you start? How did you get starting to like direct things?
Yeah, I mean that was really just a class project, and it was like 4 or 5 of us, or 5 or 6 of us. Just kind of working with the prompt that we had, make a short film 5 to 7 minutes in length, come up with a script, and, we kind of made that over the course of the semester. And yeah, I think with that, it was just kind of, it was a group project. We were all still kind of learning. We had a couple classes before, because that was done in the filmmaking 3 capstone. Yeah. So we had film 1 and we had film 2 that kind of built us up to that experience. And our professor then basically just said like, okay, now make a short film and make it good. Because this professor we have, his name's Amal, and he's very. I can see you nodding over there. Like he's like, he's not going to sugarcoat things for you. Like he expects good work. So that, we were all we knew from the get-go that we needed to make sure that what we did with that film was better than stuff we'd done in other classes.
And better it was. If you guys haven't seen Karina, I really urge you to check it out. It's on YouTube. It's called Karina, an AI rom-com. It'll be under Matt Williams, his account.
And just to clarify, no AI was used to make that. It's about an AI program and like 2 people's relationship with it. But, it was definitely a very collaborative thing, because it was literally 5 or 6 of us just kind of taking on these roles, kind of filling in the gaps where needed, and everybody had some kind of hand in every aspect of the process. So it was definitely really cool in that way.
Definitely check it out. Very funny, very humorous. I'm a big fan of it.
Do you kind of like, are you the kind of person who doesn't like looking back at your old work, like watching stuff you made like a year ago? Because I think it came out around a year ago now. Yeah. Are you that kind of person?
I mean, I don't really go back and rewatch stuff. I just kind of like, I mean, sometimes like people will find it and be like, oh, did you do this? I'm like, yeah, like here's the link, but I'll never go back and watch it, because like, it's always, especially my more recent projects, I'm a fan of too. Like I think they're good, and I'm happy to have had those experiences. But when I watch my own stuff, there's just something about it. It's like I don't know.
I think if your old stuff doesn't kind of make you cringe a little, it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
No, like I read a lot of I'll go back and like read my articles from like last year from around this time or even before, and I'll just, ugh.
Yeah.
I cannot look at that.
Yeah, because you've grown so much. And,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a good sign. It's a sign you're growing. It's a sign,
Exactly.
you're developing as an artist, as a writer, whatever else. But we're not here to talk about a film you made a year ago. We are here to talk about a film that you are currently making. I don't know the title, but please tell us about it.
Yes, so the film that I'm currently working on is called ME.EXE.
Me.EXE.
Yes, Me.EXE. And it is about a college esports player who comes across a sentient AI program that basically helps her improve her gaming skills. And throughout the film, we learn, or this character learns, that the program is actually much more sinister than it initially appears. So it's sort of this blend between horror and thriller, and yeah, I mean it's going to be really good. I'm excited about where we are in the process, and yeah.
It seems like you were putting a lot of work in. I mean, I saw these like crazy visual effects that were going into it, and like a lot of like makeup and stuff. It looked very cool. One thing I am curious about though is you seem very interested in sort of interrogating the use of AI. Is that intentional or something you're interested in, or?
Actually, no, it wasn't intentional at all, because this the idea for this film kind of came from like a pitch contest almost within the class. And the class I'm taking is the special topics for filmmaking, and at the beginning we kind of had this pitch like, okay, everybody write kind of an idea, submit it to the professors, and they'll pick. And so it wasn't my idea at all. It was a friend of mine's idea. I was asked to help write the script, but they sort of came up with this idea of like an AI, like a hostile sort of AI program. So I mean, but when you do kind of look at it, it is kind of funny because of the two.
Yeah,
two
Karina's
films.
very much about an AI kind of ruining relationships and.
Yeah, and also the lead actor for this film we're working on was also the lead actor for the last one.
What's
Really, Thomas?
Riley Wine.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah. No,
Gotcha.
Yeah, very great performance.
Yeah.
In Karina.
Yeah. So it was it is kind of funny when you think about it that way. But
Do you know what stage of production you're at right now? I'm just curious.
yeah, we're in post-production. We got to premiere the film in a month, but we're still trying to lock down visual effects and sound and music and all that. But
How does it look like being in the editing room? Like, I'm assuming you're not editing the film; someone else is doing it.
yes, that is Brennan. He's our editor right now. He's doing a great job. It's for him, I assume it's just a lot of looking at a computer screen and putting stuff together. Sometimes I'll sit in with him in our editing suite at ComArts, and we'll just kind of go over stuff. But yeah, it's pretty cool. We have an editing suite there. Where we have some awesome surround sound. Huge monitor. It's pretty cool.
Does it feel like you're making a capstone? I mean, I'm assuming it does, but I mean, just the idea, I feel like, of I'm assuming you're working with people you've been working with for the last 4 years. I mean, you're a senior, you're graduating in the spring. Mm-hmm. Does it kind of feel like this is like your representation of like, this is everything I've learned in the past 4 years. I can do this now, and like I'm showing you that.
Yeah, it definitely does feel like a culmination. Because like in this class, we haven't just been working on this film, but like we've done like spec ads,
Sure.
For different brands and stuff.
Oh wow.
So we've gotten a lot of experience, like everybody in sort of different fields. So I've not only gotten to direct this film, but I got to do like sound mixing for one of the ads we did. So it definitely does feel like kind of a test of all the skills that I've learned over the past few years in different classes. But
yeah, and one thing, this is just something, because I've heard you talk about this a lot, about the workload for being a digital storytelling student and how much is sort of asked of you in class, versus how much you kind of have to do out of class to truly develop as a filmmaker. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I think the extracurricular commitment is definitely real. There is
an with this movie. Have you had to put? I mean, it seemed like you were kind of putting a lot. I mean, this guy was doing Zoom calls over winter break, I feel like.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, continue. But
no, you're right. It's like, I mean, even during breaks, like there's sort of this. I mean, I know for other classes it's different. Like some of the more beginner level classes, there's not that much of an expectation that you're making yourself available during break or whatever. But for a class like this, where it's like, it really is kind of, you know, these are people that professors have asked to join the class.
Right.
So it's really kind of this expectation that, yeah, like you don't have to be available all the time, but be available when needed. And kind of just outside of that, you know, these class times are not long. They're about as long as any other class. It's 2 hours, 3 hours at most. So if you're meeting twice a week for 2 hours, you can't really make a film on that. So there is definitely, I think, if you want to be a film student, there is sort of this requirement of like, you know, be ready to collaborate with group members and meet and find times to meet where you can actually make this film or this ad or whatever you're making. I think that's definitely a requirement.
Be ready to put in some elbow grease outside of class.
Yeah, definitely.
And I can't imagine it's always rewarding work. It's probably a lot of the time just like grueling, like rewriting, or like editing and just like talking with people, like a lot of collaboration.
Yeah, because, you know, that's, you kind of have to do that. I mean, you have to, when you're setting up a project, when you're in pre-production, you have to be willing to have those meetings, like back to back, and you know, sit through those and kind of just grind through those and make sure that what your plan is to achieve something like a film or an ad or whatever, making sure that you're allocating the proper amount of time beforehand and like doing the correct amount of preparation. Because if you go into these like productions, you know, with no plan or no preparation, it's going to fall apart so quickly.
Yeah.
But
How much
It's a
is
lot
like
different, you know, from when you're back at home with your friends, just kind of like shooting.
well, yeah, because
whatever.
like when we did Candle, like on my phone, it was like we shot that in like a day. No lighting, no sound.
And you know, it did turn out kind of for the time. I think it turned out pretty well. That film we made, but
it was definitely fun because it was the first time that I was like, okay, I'm gonna make a film and see what it is. But you know, you can't do that now.
No,
like as a student, it's so like, you know, they're trying to prepare you to work in an industry that's already so hard to get into. So they really kind of want to instill in you like, yeah, like you're gonna have to go through these meetings and you're gonna have to find time out of class to meet with people and make film or
things aren't going to work out, you know.
yeah, like there's definitely times even when you put in all this preparation, things go sideways and you have to adapt and figure it. And so, you know, that's just kind of how it is as a filmmaker.
Yeah, I can't imagine like the idea of the film you started with, I guess, at the start of your capstone is how it looks like now. Like how much has it changed since you started working on it?
It's changed so much. Like the draft that we went into filming with was like draft 10 of the script. So it's like, and that kind of sucked because it was, you know, as a writer, and I think, Jack, you probably understand this too because you've written tons of plays, you know, and I'm sure you've had feedback, like people give you feedback on those plays. Like it's really, you know, it's not the best when people sit there, and especially when like the writers and I were sitting there in front of the whole class and like reading our script to them.
Did
and
they
like,
grill you guys?
Yeah, and so like it's definitely changed so much, but you know, the way that it got from point A to point Z now, it's like, you know, it can be tough sometimes.
And I'm sure there's a lot of compromise you have to make. Like if everyone's saying like we don't like this bit, and you're, you know, so attached to it, I can't imagine that's easy. Like just like letting go of something that you're like truly invested in.
Yeah, no, the compromise never ends from pre-production. Like when we're writing the script and sharing with people to even now post-production, because like every draft that Brendan sends my way and to the rest of the class, like we open up a document, we go through the timestamps, and we jot down our notes and say, okay, we need to change this, we need to change that. And everybody's putting their notes there, so it's always kind of like, oh, should we include this or should we?
They're all contradictory. Like
Yeah, like there's like somebody will say like, oh, I really like this bit right here, and then like somebody else will be like, I hate it. Yeah, so it's like you kind of there's always, you have to be willing to collaborate, and you know, there's definitely moments where somebody say like, I think this, and I might disagree, and how do you go about that? You know, so it's definitely a big part of the process.
yeah.
You ever put your foot down as like, correct me if I'm wrong, you're the director of this project, right? Do you ever really have to like put your foot down and be like, no, we're keeping this in, this is important to the script, this is important to the plot of the movie, or like a choice, like maybe like a sound bite or just like a shot? You ever done that?
I I'd say I've never had to put my foot down or anything. Like, it's always been very, like, people have always been very respectful. I'm very lucky to work with the people that I'm working with, because I've had, you know, class projects before where maybe I haven't been so the collaboration hasn't been great with I'm trying to find a way to dance around, but you know what I mean, though. Yeah. And I'm very lucky with this project that I have the classmates and collaborators that I do, because they're all so wonderful and so talented. And so, like, with creative choices, it's never really been like putting my foot down. It's been like, okay, somebody has an opinion, they have kind of a way that they want to see things happen. You know, let's talk about it. Let's see if we, because there have been so many times throughout this process, like literally countless times, where somebody said, like, hey, have you considered this? Or, hey, this doesn't look right. And then you look back at it, you're like, oh, you're absolutely right. Mm-hmm. And that's not to say that sometimes somebody will say something and I'll be like, I don't know if I agree with that. But, you know, it's never been like a grueling process in that regard. It's felt very collaborative and very open, at least from my end.
Gotcha. Just curious about that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess now I just ask you, like, reflecting on 4 years, because I have the advantage of kind of seeing your opinions on being a filmmaker and wanting to do this and blah, 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 blah. Just kind of by nature of living with you my entire life, I have the advantage of kind of seeing that develop. But I'd be curious how you think these last 4 years have treated you. Has it made you into the filmmaker you want to be? Do you feel like you're kind of ready to, like, get out there? Yeah. How's these last 4 years been?
No, I mean, I'm nowhere near the filmmaker or
Yeah, I guess let me rephrase. Do you feel like this is the point? Do you feel like you've reached a point where you're like, okay, yeah, like this is kind of what I wanted to get out of these 4 years of
well, yeah. I mean, like, in that sense, like, yeah, I think I've learned a lot these 4 years.
Yeah.
I've gotten to experience a lot of cool things that a lot of people don't get to experience. I feel very, very fortunate in that regard. But yeah, I think there's so much more to learn, and I'm nowhere near, like, where I want to be, because you know, I directed this project, which, you know, it sounds cool, you know, it's like, oh, like the director, whatever. It's like, you know, I didn't get to, like, focus so much on the technical aspects, and that's the stuff that I think really kind of makes you valuable when you go into the industry. So, you know, I got to watch other people kind of learn that and experience that, and so it's gonna, when I think about it that way, it's like, yeah, I directed it, but, you know, I might not be as knowledgeable about some of the things that, you know, it'd be cool to be knowledgeable about, because I had that role, you know. But so there's definitely a long ways to go until I feel like I'm super comfortable with where I'm at, because there's still a lot that I have to learn. Yeah. But in terms of, like, looking back on these past 4 years, I've learned a lot. I've met a lot of cool people, gotten to be a part of some really cool projects. Yeah. Yeah.
And this is great, because I feel like on this show we talk so much about the finished product. We talk, we do a lot of criticism, we do a lot of analysis and just kind of, like, general speak. But I think it's amazing to kind of hear about, like, and obviously you're not making Hollywood feature films, but you know, it's nice to kind of listen to the work that goes into this kind of things, because you know, we don't always talk about the amount of drafts that need to happen and all the compromising that needs to happen and all these other things. So it's always great to hear about that.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, just you, actually. I don't do that. It's my first time doing this.
Well, okay, so Jack, so to throw the question back at you, do you feel like after, you know, you're kind of, and I know you still have some school left to go.
I do.
But, you know, like, after, you know, these past couple of years, like, how do you think, like, do you think you're becoming the writer that you want to be, like, in regard to your own sort of journalistic?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
Because you're a columnist.
Yeah,
this year,
I am
which
I don't know if I've talked about that on the show, because we don't really talk about my writing as much.
Well, we're going to talk about it right now.
Yeah, really throwing the question back. No, that's awesome. Yeah, I think my first year here, I was a reporter, and then kind of near the end of last spring, I was like, I kind of like this columning thing. I think I might want to get into this. We kind of talked about making that a position here, and we did. So then this semester, or last semester, I mean, so this year, I started as a flick. That was my position, like a columnist. And I think the first semester, I wrote a lot more like opinion-y things, because I was like, that's kind of like what I think a columnist is, you know, is like someone who writes opinions. That was just kind of my view on it. And then I started to kind of get into this headspace of like, maybe it's a little different. I started reading a lot more, essentially what I'm saying. I started reading a lot more like kind of magazine-y journalists and like other columnists and stuff. And I kind of started to see like columning can actually just kind of be reporting, but like with more of a narrative voice. And then especially this semester, I'm taking a Joan Didion class, which is just like about her, like we're just learning about her work and reading her and like kind of writing about some of kind of writing in like a similar way that she would. And it was through that where I kind of realized like I really was like, I think this is kind of like the kinds of stories I want to tell, of like reporting and talking to people and telling people's stories, but kind of inserting myself in the narrative and writing it from my perspective. So
does that feel like how does that feel compared to writing from a more like objective kind of like, you know, like AP style, like kind of?
I think there's some things.
I was going to say, because do you feel like you have more freedom reporting as a
100%.
columnist?
I mean, one of the last stories I did, The Art of the Party.
Oh, yeah.
It was literally, I went to house parties, and I wrote about them, and I wrote about like my experience there, and kind of what I discovered was this kind of scene that exists of like people who party, and kind of like the dynamics that exist between like this type of party and this type of party, and like why certain people aren't allowed in certain places, kind of socially. And yeah, I think that's one of those stories where, you know, you could give it to a reporter and they could tell the story well, but I think it's one of those stories that is kind of best told with this sort of narrative style, because and actually we had tried to write this story, like other reporters had tried to like kind of tackle a similar story, and it ended up just kind of dropping, because it's not that they're not talented or whatever, but it's kind of just like a hard story to tell when you have to like kind of conform to all these like journalistic rules and blah blah blah.
I hate that sometimes. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know what I'm doing anymore, and it's like I feel like I'm just trying to write to make money now, and it's like I'm liking the way it's going, but it's like I totally get you. Where it's like I always want more freedom when I'm writing, and like sometimes journalism doesn't allow that.
And I think even as reporters, I think, and this might be a little controversial, I think you should always be trying to like be as creative as possible, because I mean, what worst case, your editor just takes it out and tells you to rewrite it, you know. And that's kind of the headspace I was in at one point, where it's like I'm just gonna like try and write this as creative as possible, you know. And if my editor doesn't like it, then she doesn't like it, and I have to write a new version, or she just edits it, or whatever. But that's kind of where I started to get into this, and it was like, okay, well, if I just write columns, I can kind of write how I feel, kind of insert myself in the story, and there's no issue there. So,
Right.
yeah, I'd say I'm definitely. I think this is kind of the kind of writing I want to do, and this last year has been really helpful for me to figure that out.
Now you just need to get an internship with the New York Times or something. It's just
That's the big next step.
No, it's a pretty small step.
Yeah.
That's a pretty small step.
in the grand scheme of things, it's not that
nothing,
big
yeah.
deal.
Well, yeah, this has been Reeling It In. Oh, Matt, your next
yeah.
film, please tell us when it's premiering.
I got to plug this a little bit. So April 23rd at Studio C, Meridian Mall.
Studio C.
We are Studio C.
Okemos.
Yeah.
Okemos, yeah.
Okemos. Studio C, Meridian Mall in Okemos. We are showing ME.EXE for the first time as part of a larger digital storytelling showcase. It starts at 8:15, I believe.
Okay.
I could have that wrong, but 8:15, we'll be showing the film. All the filmmakers will be there, so you can ask us tons of questions about how we made this movie. It's going to be really fun.
I will be there. You can ask me all kinds of questions.
Jack will
about
be
the
there.
podcast.
Ask Jack about reeling it in. But yeah, please come. We're trying to fill seats. So
yeah, please get out there. Support local filmmakers. It's a great thing.
Totally free, right?
Totally free.
Completely free. Yeah. Well, this has been Reeling It In. I'm Jack. This is Anish. This is Matt. Next week, Kyra will be back. But if you hang in until next fall, Anish will be our next co-host. So I just kind of wanted to introduce everyone to him. We're going to have a great time next year talking about all things cinema.
A lot of movies.
But as always, thank you. Thank you to Taylor, our podcast coordinator. And remember, Thank you to our guests. If you have any film opinions that you'd like us to hear and talk about, make sure you email me at jack.williams@statenews.com, and we'll talk about it on the show. But until then, see ya.